The first thing Sarah Conley remembered was the sound, not the gunfire, but the silence that came right after it, the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums like water. She was 34 years old, a trauma nurse at a regional hospital in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and in the 11 years she'd worn scrubs, she had never once frozen. Not until the night a wounded soldier was wheeled through her emergency room doors with blood soaking through his uniform and the gunman trailing in right behind him, screaming for everyone to get back. If this story moves you, hit that like button right now, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, share it with someone who believes in courage and second chances, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story like this one. Sarah didn't know the soldier's name yet. She only knew he was someone's son, someone's husband, maybe someone's father, and that he was dying on a gurney in front of her while a man with a rifle paced the hallway shouting that nobody was going anywhere until his demands were met. The gunman, it would later come out, was a man named Marcus Webb, a disgruntled former contractor who blamed the military for a contract gone wrong, for a life that had unraveled, for every grievance he'd nursed alone in a rented room for 2 years. None of that mattered to Sarah in the moment. What mattered was the young ranger on the stretcher, a man named Caleb Whitfield, 26 years old, who had been rushed in after a training accident at Fort Liberty left him with internal bleeding and a collapsed lung. Caleb couldn't speak. He could barely breathe. And when Marcus Webb raised his rifle toward the stretcher, screaming something about how soldiers like Caleb had ruined his life, Sarah Conley did the only thing her body would let her do. She stepped in front of the gurney with her arms spread wide, her palm raised, and she said the word wait so firmly that for one suspended second, Webb actually hesitated. That hesitation cost her. The shot that followed struck her shoulder, spinning her sideways, blood blooming dark and immediate across her blue scrubs. But she didn't go down. She grabbed the rail of the stretcher with her good arm, gritted her teeth against the pain tearing through her body, and kept pushing Caleb Whitfield toward the trauma bay, refusing to let go even as her vision blurred at the edges. Security finally tackled Webb to the ground, disarming him before he could fire again, but by then the damage to Sarah's shoulder was done, and the entire ER had gone from a place of healing to a crime scene in the space of 90 seconds. What nobody in that hospital expected was what happened 2 hours later. Word travels fast in military towns, and Fayetteville sits in the shadow of one of the largest army posts in the country. By the time Caleb Whitfield was out of surgery and stable, by the time Sarah Conley was lying in a hospital bed 2 floors up with her arm in a sling and her hands still shaking, the story of what she'd done had already spread through every barracks, every mess hall, every group chat connected to the Special Forces community. A nurse had taken a bullet for one of their own. She hadn't trained for it, hadn't been ordered to do it, hadn't even known the man's name. She had simply refused to move. That night, the hospital's parking lot began to fill with trucks. Then more trucks. Soldiers in civilian clothes, soldiers still in uniform from a late training exercise, men who had served in Afghanistan and Iraq and places that never made the news, all of them showing up because someone had put it out that the woman who saved their brother needed protecting, not from another attacker, but from the cameras already gathering outside, from reporters trying to push past hospital staff, from anyone who might disturb the recovery of a woman who'd given a piece of herself for a stranger in uniform. By midnight, nearly 50 Green Berets and Rangers had gathered outside St. Augustine Regional, standing in quiet rows along the entrance, not shouting, not making a scene, just standing as a wall between the world and the woman recovering inside. Hospital security didn't ask them to leave. Nobody had the heart to. A captain named Joseph Bennett, who had flown in from a training assignment the moment he heard, told the charge nurse on duty that they weren't there to cause trouble. They were there because in their world, when someone bleeds for you, you don't forget it, and you don't let them stand alone afterward. Sarah didn't learn about the soldiers outside until the next morning, when a young nurse named Grace Holloway wheeled in a television so she could see the local news coverage. She watched, stunned, as the camera panned across rows of men in uniform standing silent vigil in a hospital parking lot, all because of something she had done on instinct, without thinking, without calculation. She began to cry, not from the pain in her shoulder, but from something fuller and harder to name, the realization that a single decision made in 9 seconds of chaos had rippled outward into something she never could have imagined. Caleb Whitfield, still recovering down the hall, asked to see her the moment he was strong enough to be wheeled to her room. When they finally met, fully conscious, he didn't have the words at first. He simply took her hand, the one not in a sling, and held it the way a person holds something they almost lost. He told her that he had a daughter, 4 years old, waiting for him at home, and that because of her, he was going to walk back through his front door instead of being carried through it. Sarah, through tears, told him she hadn't done anything heroic. She had just refused to let go. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness still exists in this world. And before we close this out, I want to ask you something. Comment below the word you'd use to describe Sarah in that moment, because I think every single one of you will see something different in her courage. Sarah Conley healed over the following months, her shoulder slower to mend than her spirit, which seemed to grow stronger with every letter and card that arrived from soldiers she'd never met, all of them thanking her for a single act of instinct that reminded an entire community what selflessness looks like. She returned to nursing eventually, scar and all, and to this day she keeps a folded American flag on her desk, a gift from the 50 men who once stood guard outside her window, not because she asked them to, but because some debts of the heart can only be repaid by showing up.